Have you ever been on a date so bad that you wanted to disappear into the night? Well, tonight's story is about someone who actually could do that. This is the tale of Victor Cassius, a 300-year-old vampire trying desperately to be normal for one evening, and Kate Stewart, the woman who made him want to try. This is the story of their disastrous first date. Victor Cassius had survived the Black Plague, the French Revolution, 2 world wars, and the invention of disco. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this moment. Sitting in his century-old Victorian mansion, staring at his phone like it was a foreign artifact, trying to figure out how to ask a woman out to dinner. The woman in question was Kate Stewart, a 32-year-old antiquarian book restorer he'd met 3 weeks ago at the Riverside Historical Library. She had auburn hair that caught the light like copper wire, green eyes that seemed to notice everything, and a laugh that made Victor's undead heart wish it could beat again. She was also, inconveniently, entirely human and completely unaware that vampires existed. Victor had been avoiding romantic entanglements for the better part of a century. The complications were endless. How do you explain that you can't eat food? That sunlight gives you third-degree burns? That you're technically dead and have been since 1724? Most modern dating advice didn't cover these particular obstacles. But Kate was different. When she'd examined a first-edition Gothic novel in the library's collection, running her fingers over the leather binding with such reverence and care, Victor had felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: genuine interest in another person. They'd talked for hours about preservation techniques, the history of bookbinding, and the beauty of illuminated manuscripts. She'd made him remember what it felt like to be alive. His friend and fellow vampire, Dmitry Volkov, had been insufferably encouraging about the whole thing. "You need this, Victor," Dmitry had said, lounging in Victor's study like a pale, well-dressed cat. "You've been moping around this mausoleum for 50 years. Ask her out. What's the worst that could happen?" Victor could think of approximately 17 disasters off the top of his head, but Dmitry had a point. He was lonely. He missed connection, conversation, the electric feeling of possibility. So he'd done it. He'd asked Kate to dinner, and she'd said yes. Now, standing in front of his wardrobe, Victor faced another crisis. What does a vampire wear to a human restaurant in 2025? His instinct was to reach for the velvet frock coat, but Dmitry had been very clear that this would make him look like he was going to a Renaissance fair. Instead, Victor selected a simple black button-down shirt, charcoal slacks, and a jacket that Dmitry had assured him was contemporary but classic. He looked at himself in the mirror. Well, he looked at where his reflection should be. Mirrors didn't work for vampires, which made grooming a creative challenge. He ran his fingers through his dark hair, hoping it looked appropriately styled and not like he'd just risen from a coffin. Which, technically, he had, though it was a very nice coffin. More of a bed, really. Coffins were so medieval. The restaurant reservation was for 8 o'clock at Luminescence, a trendy farm-to-table establishment downtown. Victor had chosen it carefully. It was dimly lit, good for his complexion, which tended toward corpse pale under bright lights, had a reputation for small, artistic portions, less food to pretend to eat, and played music at a volume that would cover any awkward silences, of which Victor anticipated many. He'd practiced. He'd actually practiced eating in front of Dmitry, who'd laughed so hard he'd nearly fallen off his chair. "You look like you're defusing a bomb," Dmitry had wheezed, watching Victor gingerly lift a fork to his mouth. "Just relax. Chew, move it around, and swallow. You can always excuse yourself and regurgitate later." The thought was deeply unappealing, but Victor was committed. He would do this. He would have one normal date with a beautiful, intelligent woman. He would not reveal that he was an immortal creature of the night. How hard could it be? Victor arrived at Luminescence 15 minutes early, a habit from an era when punctuality was a virtue rather than an oddity. The restaurant was everything the reviews had promised: exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, and enough reclaimed wood to build a small ship. Soft jazz played in the background, and the scent of garlic hit him like a physical blow the moment he walked through the door. Garlic. Of course. Why hadn't he anticipated garlic? The vampire garlic myth was, thankfully, exaggerated. Garlic didn't cause him to burst into flames or recoil in horror. It just smelled absolutely overwhelming to his enhanced senses, like standing inside a garlic bulb while someone shouted the concept of garlic directly into his brain. His eyes watered slightly as he approached the host stand. "Reservation for Cassius," he managed, trying not to breathe too deeply. "Table for 2. The hostess, a young woman with a name tag reading Amber, smiled professionally. "Of course, Mr. Cassius. Your table is ready. Right this way." She led him to a corner booth, which was perfect except for one detail. It was directly beneath an air vent pumping out what smelled like aerosolized garlic essence. Victor sat down anyway, reminding himself that he'd survived worse. The Inquisition, for instance. This was just dinner. He ordered water and waited, checking his watch every 30 seconds. At precisely 8 o'clock, he saw her. Kate walked into the restaurant like she owned it, wearing a deep blue dress that matched the evening sky and carrying a small clutch purse. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders, and when she spotted Victor and smiled, he forgot how to think in 3 different languages. He stood up too quickly, bumping the table and nearly spilling his water. "Smooth. Victor. Very smooth." "Victor, hi," Kate said warmly, approaching the table. "I hope I'm not late. Traffic was insane." No, perfect timing," Victor said, moving to pull out her chair. At least some gentlemanly instincts remained intact. "You look stunning." "Thank you," she said, settling into her seat. "You clean up pretty well yourself. I have to admit, I wasn't sure you owned anything besides those academic tweed jackets." Victor laughed, genuine and relieved. "I contain multitudes." The waiter appeared almost immediately, a cheerful man named Marcus who looked like he'd never had a bad day in his life. "Good evening. Can I start you folks off with some drinks? We have an excellent wine list, or if you're feeling adventurous, our mixologist has crafted some seasonal cocktails." Kate glanced at the menu. "I'd love to try the lavender martini." Victor's mind raced. Alcohol did nothing for vampires except make them slightly dizzy and very nauseous. But ordering nothing would seem strange. "I'll have the same," he heard himself say, immediately regretting it. "Excellent choice," Marcus beamed. "And just so you know, tonight's special is a pan-seared duck breast with a red wine reduction and roasted garlic confit." "Garlic confit. Wonderful. We also have a fantastic appetizer I'd recommend," Marcus continued enthusiastically. "Fresh burrata with heirloom tomatoes, basil, and garlic crostini." "Maybe we'll start with just the drinks," Victor said quickly. Kate gave him a curious look but didn't comment. When Marcus departed, Kate leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So, I have to admit, I'm curious. You're a bit of a mystery, Victor Cassius. I've known you for 3 weeks, and I still don't know what you actually do. You seem to know everything about historical preservation, you're always at the library at odd hours, and you have this whole dark, mysterious vibe going on." Victor felt his carefully constructed composure crack slightly. "I'm an independent researcher," he said, which was technically true. "I study historical documents and artifacts. Preservation techniques, authentication, that sort of thing. It's freelance work, so I keep unusual hours." Also technically true. He just left out the part where he'd lived through most of the history he was researching. "That's fascinating," Kate said, and she sounded like she meant it. "What got you into it?" "I've always been interested in the past," Victor said carefully. "In preserving things that might otherwise be lost. There's something beautiful about holding a piece of history in your hands, knowing that someone from another time created it." Kate's eyes lit up. "Yes, exactly. That's why I love restoration work. Every book tells 2 stories, the one written on its pages and the one written in its wear and tear. The fingerprints in the margins, the water stains, the pressed flowers people used as bookmarks. Those are messages from the past too." Victor felt himself relax marginally. This was why he'd asked her out. When Kate talked about books, about history, about preservation, he could almost forget the vast chasm of mortality between them. Their drinks arrived, and Victor stared at his lavender martini like it might bite him. Kate raised her glass. "To first dates and new adventures." Victor clinked his glass against hers. To new adventures. He brought the glass to his lips and took the smallest possible sip. The alcohol hit his system like a shock wave. His taste buds, hypersensitive from centuries of tasting only blood, registered every botanical note in the gin, every floral hint of lavender, every molecule of vermouth. It was overwhelming and vaguely nauseating. "Wow," he managed, setting the glass down carefully. "That's potent." Kate laughed. "Are you a lightweight? We can order you something else." No, it's perfect," Victor lied. "Just stronger than I expected." Marcus returned with menus and an enthusiasm that bordered on weaponized cheerfulness. "So, have you folks dined with us before?" "No." "Wonderful. Let me tell you about our philosophy. Everything on our menu is locally sourced, organic, and crafted with love. Our chef, Sebastian, believes that food is art, and every dish is a masterpiece." Victor opened his menu and immediately regretted it. Every item seemed to contain either garlic, onions, or both. The pan-seared duck, the roasted chicken, the braised short ribs. Even the vegetarian options were aggressively allium-forward. "I'll give you folks a few minutes to decide," Marcus said. "But definitely check out the specials board. The butternut squash ravioli with sage brown butter and crispy garlic chips is to die for." To die for. Victor managed not to react to the phrase. When they were alone again, Kate studied her menu with the same careful attention she gave to damaged book spines. "Everything looks amazing. I'm thinking either the duck or the sea base. What about you?" Victor scanned desperately for the least food-like food on the menu. "Perhaps the garden salad?" Kate looked up, surprised. "Just a salad?" "Victor, the portions here are supposed to be tiny. You'll be starving." "I had a large lunch," Victor said quickly. "Very large. Enormous, really. I'm still quite full. This was a mistake." He could see it in Kate's expression, the slight downturn of her smile, the flicker of disappointment. She thought he wasn't interested, that he was planning a quick escape. Actually, Victor backpedaled. "The sea base sounds excellent. I'll have that." "Are you sure? You don't have to order something just because." "I'm sure," Victor said firmly. "The sea base. Definitely." Kate smiled again, and Victor felt a small victory, immediately followed by creeping dread. He was going to have to eat an entire sea base. A whole fish. With sides. And he'd have to look like he enjoyed it. When Marcus returned, they placed their orders. Kate chose the duck breast, which came with roasted fingerling potatoes and broccolini. Victor ordered the sea base, which came with what the menu described as a medley of seasonal vegetables and lemon garlic aioli. "More garlic. Excellent. Wonderful choices," Marcus said. "These will take about 20 minutes. Can I get you started with any appetizers? The burrata is really exceptional tonight." "No thank you," Victor and Kate said simultaneously, then laughed. "We're saving room for the main course," Kate added. When Marcus left, Kate took another sip of her martini and regarded Victor with curious eyes. "Can I ask you something?" Victor tensed. "Of course. Why me? I'm sorry. Why did you ask me out?" Kate said, her directness catching him off guard. "You don't seem like the type who does this often. Actually, you seem like the type who actively avoids it. So why break pattern?" Victor considered lying, offering some smooth, practiced response. But Kate deserved better than that. "Because when I'm talking to you, I forget to be lonely," he said honestly. "I forget that I'm different. You make me remember what it's like to be interested in the world, in ideas, in conversation. You make me want to try." Kate blinked, and for a moment Victor worried he'd said too much, revealed too much of the truth hidden under the metaphor. Then she smiled, soft and genuine. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time." "It's the truth. I'm glad you asked me out, Victor. Even if you are mysterious and weird about food." Victor laughed despite himself. "Fair observation. They fell into easier conversation then, talking about a Gothic manuscript that had recently come into the library's collection, debating the merits of various preservation techniques, discussing their favorite books. Victor found himself relaxing, almost forgetting the challenges ahead. Kate was brilliant, funny, and when she laughed at his dry humor, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades: hope. That's when things started to go wrong. The first sign of trouble came when Marcus delivered their entrees with a flourish. Pan-seared duck breast for the lady, and Mediterranean sea bass for the gentleman. Enjoy. Victor stared down at his plate. The sea bass stared back, its dead eye somehow accusatory. It was surrounded by grilled vegetables glistening with oil and a generous dollop of aioli that smelled so strongly of garlic that Victor's eyes watered. Kate cut into her duck with obvious pleasure. "Oh my God, this is incredible. How's your fish?" Victor picked up his fork, using the techniques Dimitri had taught him. "Cut a small piece. Lift it to your mouth. Chew as if you enjoy it. Swallow. Don't think about having to regurgitate it later." He performed the action, and his enhanced senses immediately registered everything wrong with the experience. The texture was like chewing rubber. The taste was overwhelming, every flavor amplified to absurd levels. The garlic aioli felt like acid on his tongue. "Good," he managed, forcing himself to swallow. "Very good." "You look like you're in pain," Kate observed. No, just savoring." Kate gave him a skeptical look but returned to her own meal. Victor forced himself to take another bite, then another. Each one was an exercise in self-control. His vampire biology was screaming at him to stop, that this was wrong, that he was poisoning himself with human food. He reached for his water glass to wash down the taste and misjudged the distance. The glass tipped, spilling ice water directly into his lap. "Damn!" Victor hissed, jumping up. The cold water soaked through his expensive slacks, creating an unfortunate dark stain in an even more unfortunate location. Kate covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. "Are you okay?" "Fine, yes, just clumsy," Victor said, grabbing his napkin and dabbing uselessly at the water. A waiter rushed over with a towel, and Victor found himself bent awkwardly over the table, trying to dry his pants while maintaining some semblance of dignity. "Would you like to use the restroom?" Marcus asked helpfully. "Yes, excellent idea," Victor said, grateful for the escape. "Excuse me, Kate. I'll just be a moment." He fled to the bathroom, dripping and mortified. This was a disaster. He'd been on the date for less than an hour and had already nearly gagged on fish, spilled water all over himself, and generally behaved like someone who'd never eaten in a restaurant before. Which, to be fair, he hadn't. Not in about 100 years. Victor locked himself in a stall and leaned against the door, taking unnecessary breaths to center himself. He could do this. He was Victor Cassius. He'd negotiated with kings, survived plague, and mastered the complexities of modern technology. He could handle one dinner date. After patting his pants as dry as possible with paper towels, Victor checked his appearance in the mirror. Or rather, in the space where the mirror should have shown his reflection. Right. No reflection. He ran his hands through his hair, hoping it looked acceptable, and returned to the table. Kate was waiting with a sympathetic smile. "Better." "Much thank you," Victor said, sliding back into his seat. The water stain was still visible, but at least it was drying. "You know," Kate said gently, "if you're not enjoying your meal, you don't have to finish it. We can order something else." "No, it's excellent," Victor insisted, cutting another piece of fish. He would finish this meal if it killed him. Again. They continued eating, and Victor developed a strategy. Cut the food into smaller pieces, chew thoroughly, drink water to help it down, and under no circumstances think about what would happen later. Kate told him about a rare book auction she was attending next week, and Victor shared a carefully edited story about a manuscript he'd studied in Paris. Then the garlic kicked in. Victor had been so focused on the mechanical act of eating that he hadn't considered the cumulative effect of all that garlic aioli. His vampire biology, already in distress from the fish and alcohol, staged a full revolt. His stomach cramped violently. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The room began to spin slightly. Victor. Kate's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? You've gone really pale. Pale was his natural state, but Victor understood what she meant. He must look like death. Appropriate, given the circumstances. I'm fine, he said, but his voice sounded strained even to his own ears. Perhaps the fish was a bit. He didn't finish the sentence because at that moment, his heightened hearing picked up a conversation from 3 tables away. A man was proposing to his girlfriend, getting down on one knee with a ring in his trembling hand. Under normal circumstances, this would be sweet. At the moment, with his senses in overdrive from the garlic, Victor could hear everything. The man's racing heartbeat. The girlfriend's sharp intake of breath. The rush of blood through their veins. Blood. Victor's fangs began to extend, an automatic physiological response to the sound and scent of blood. He clamped his mouth shut, pressing his lips together so tightly they went white. This could not be happening. Not here. Not now. Victor, seriously, you look terrible, Kate said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Her skin was warm, alive, and Victor could feel her pulse under his fingers. The steady thump-thump of her heartbeat. He pulled his hand back too quickly. Excuse me, he managed, standing abruptly. Restroom. Again. He made it to the bathroom in record time, bursting into a stall and locking the door. His fangs were fully extended now, sharp and impossible to hide. The garlic-induced nausea was building to a crescendo. His reflection less form hunched over the toilet as he tried to breathe through the crisis. Pull yourself together, Victor muttered to himself. You are 300 years old. You have conquered nations. You can conquer one dinner date. He forced his fangs to retract through sheer willpower, a process that was deeply uncomfortable and involved a lot of jaw clenching. The nausea remained, but he could manage it. He had to manage it. He splashed water on his face, straightened his jacket, and gave himself a stern mental talking to. When he returned to the table the 3rd time, Kate was looking at him with open concern. Okay, something is definitely wrong. Food poisoning? Are you allergic to something? Should I call someone? No, please, I'm all right, Victor said, though he very much was not. I think I might be coming down with something. I'm so sorry, Kate. This isn't how I wanted tonight to go. Kate's expression softened. Hey, it's okay. We can do this another time. Let me get the check and... No, Victor said firmly. I asked you to dinner. We're having dinner. I'm not leaving until we finish this date properly. It was perhaps the most stubborn thing Victor had said in a century, and almost certainly the most foolish. But he meant it. He would see this through. Kate looked like she wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. All right, she said. But we're skipping dessert, and you're going straight home after this. Agreed, Victor said, grateful beyond measure. They finished their meals, or rather, Kate finished hers while Victor pushed food around his plate and occasionally took tiny, torturous bites. They talked, and despite everything, it was still good. Kate told him about her childhood in Oregon, about how she'd fallen in love with old books when her grandmother left her a collection of first editions. Victor told her about traveling through Europe, carefully avoiding any mention of the centuries he'd spent there. Marcus cleared their plates and launched into his dessert speech, but Kate cut him off with a polite smile. Just the check, please. We need to get my friend here some rest. Oh no, is he all right? Marcus asked, looking at Victor with concern. I'm fine, Victor said automatically. He's clearly not fine, Kate said. The check, please. When Marcus hurried away, Victor looked at Kate with genuine gratitude. Thank you. And I'm sorry. This has been a disaster. Are you kidding? Kate said. This has been the most memorable first date I've ever had. You spilled water on yourself, turned green eating fish, and disappeared to the bathroom 3 times. I'll never forget this. That's not the reassurance you think it is, Victor said dryly. Kate laughed, and the sound made everything worthwhile. I like you, Victor Cassius. You're weird and awkward and clearly terrible at dating, but there's something genuine about you. Most guys try to be smooth and perfect. You're just you. If only she knew how not smooth and how not perfect and how not human he actually was. Marcus returned with the check, and Victor managed to pay despite his garlic-addled state. As they stood to leave, Victor felt the room tilt slightly. Kate grabbed his arm to steady him. "Okay, that's it," she said firmly. "I'm driving you home. You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You can barely walk straight. Where's your car?" "I took a rideshare," Victor admitted. He couldn't drive anyway. His night vision was too good, and he got distracted by everything moving in the darkness. "Perfect. My car's 2 blocks away. Can you make it?" Victor nodded, and they left the restaurant together. The cool night air helped clear his head slightly, though his stomach was still staging a rebellion. They walked slowly, Kate's hand on his arm, and despite his physical distress, Victor found himself enjoying the simple contact. "You know what the ironic thing is?" Kate said as they walked. "I was so nervous about tonight. I kept thinking, what if he's bored? What if I say something stupid? What if I'm not interesting enough?" "You're the most interesting person I've met in decades," Victor said, and immediately realized that was probably too honest. But Kate just smiled. "Decades? How old are you, anyway?" "I'd guess mid-30s. "Something like that," Victor said vaguely. "Mid-300s. But who was counting?" They reached Kate's car, a practical Honda that smelled like old books and vanilla air freshener. She opened the passenger door for him, and Victor folded himself into the seat, grateful to be off his feet. "Address?" Kate asked, starting the engine. Victor gave her the street name, carefully omitting that it was a massive Victorian mansion that looked like it belonged in a Gothic novel. "Just drop me at the corner. I don't want you to go out of your way." "Victor, I'm driving you home. I'm taking you to your actual door." This was a problem. Victor's home looked like the lair of a vampire because it literally was the lair of a vampire. Gargoyles. Iron gates. Windows with heavy blackout curtains. A garden full of poisonous nightshade and belladonna. Not exactly the image he wanted to project. But he was too nauseous to argue, so he gave her the full address and prayed she wouldn't ask too many questions. The drive to Victor's home took 15 minutes, during which Kate maintained a stream of comfortable conversation while Victor tried not to vomit in her car. She talked about her upcoming week, about a restoration project that was giving her trouble, about her cat, Myrtle, who apparently had strong opinions about Victor based on the small amount Kate had told her about him. "Your cat has opinions about me?" Victor asked, latching on to the absurdity of it. "Myrtle has opinions about everything," Kate said. "She's a very judgmental cat. I showed her your picture from the library website, and she hissed." "There's a picture of me on the library website?" "You're a regular donor. They have a whole donor recognition page." Myrtle was not impressed. Victor made a mental note to have that picture removed. Donor recognition pages felt dangerously close to the kind of documentation vampires generally avoided. When they turned onto his street, Kate let out a low whistle. "Wow. This is quite a neighborhood. These houses are incredible." "Historic district," Victor said weakly. "Lots of old architecture." They pulled up in front of Victor's mansion, and Kate's eyes widened. "This is yours." The house loomed against the night sky, all Gothic Revival architecture and dark stone. The iron fence. The tower. The gargoyles perched on the corners like stone sentinels. In the darkness, it looked exactly like what it was, the home of something that belonged to the night. "Family property," Victor said, which was true. His family. All dead. 4 centuries. "It's incredible," Kate breathed. "Victor, this place looks like it belongs in a museum. The preservation must be a nightmare." "It keeps me busy," Victor said, fumbling with his seatbelt. He needed to get inside before his vampire biology forced the issue of the garlic in a truly unfortunate way. "Can I see inside?" Kate asked, and Victor's heart would have stopped if it had been beating. "It's not really. I mean, it's quite late, and I'm not feeling well, and I'm a historical preservation specialist looking at what appears to be a perfectly maintained Victorian Gothic mansion," Kate said. "Victor, if you don't let me at least peek inside, I might cry." Victor weighed his options. Let Kate inside his obviously vampiric home, or disappoint her and potentially end any chance of a second date. The choice was between two different types of disaster. "Just a quick look," he heard himself say. "It's quite dark inside." "I'd expect nothing less from a Gothic revival," Kate said, practically bouncing in her seat. They got out of the car, and Victor led her up the stone walkway to his front door. His hands shook slightly as he unlocked it, and he sent a silent prayer to whatever gods might listen to undead creatures that Dmitri wasn't visiting and that nothing obviously vampiric was lying around in plain sight. The door swung open, and Kate stepped into the foyer with an audible gasp. To be fair, it was impressive. The entrance hall was 2 stories tall, with a grand staircase that curved up into darkness. Original gas lamps, converted to electric but maintaining the aesthetic, cast warm light on wood paneling and antique portraits. A chandelier hung from the ceiling like a frozen waterfall of crystal. "Victor," Kate whispered, "this is extraordinary. Is that original molding?" "Most of it, yes," Victor said, watching her run her fingers along the carved wood with the same reverence she showed old books. She walked slowly through the foyer, taking in every detail. The Persian rugs, the antique furniture, the paintings in ornate frames. Victor trailed behind her, seeing his home through her eyes and realizing just how many questions it raised. How could a freelance researcher afford this? Where was his family? Why did everything look like it belonged in 1850? Kate paused in front of a portrait of a severe-looking man in 18th-century dress. "Who's this?" "Ancestor," Victor said, looking at what was essentially a portrait of himself from 1720. "Family resemblance, they say." "It's uncanny," Kate murmured. "He could be your twin." "Because he is me," Victor thought but did not say. They moved into the library, which was Victor's pride and joy and also probably the least vampiric room in the house. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a fireplace, reading lamps. Kate made a sound that was almost a moan. "You have a library. A actual, proper library. With what looks like—" She moved closer to the shelves. "First editions?" "Victor, is that an original Gutenberg Bible?" "Facsimile," Victor lied. It was absolutely an original Gutenberg Bible. He'd bought it in 1455. Kate was pulling books from the shelves now, examining them with expert hands. "These are incredible. The condition. The variety. How long did it take you to build this collection?" "Quite a while," Victor said, which was the understatement of the century. "Several centuries, actually." That's when Kate noticed the windows. Or rather, the lack thereof. Heavy blackout curtains covered every window, blocking out any potential light. "You really don't like sunlight, do you?" she said, an edge of curiosity in her voice. "Sensitive eyes," Victor said quickly. "Photophobia. Medical condition." "Ah," Kate said, but she was looking at him with that sharp, observant gaze that had first attracted him to her. The gaze that missed nothing. Victor's stomach chose that moment to cramp violently. He must have made a sound because Kate was instantly at his side. "Okay, that's enough grand tour," she said firmly. "You need to lie down, drink some water, and possibly call a doctor." "I'll be fine," Victor insisted, but he let her guide him to one of the library chairs. "Really, you should go. I don't want to keep you. Victor Cassius, I'm not leaving until I'm sure you're not dying." Oh, the irony. Kate disappeared and returned a moment later with a glass of water from somewhere. "Drink this. Slowly." Victor sipped the water obediently. It helped, marginally. The garlic was working its way out of his system, but it would take time. Time he would normally spend in his in his locked bedroom, away from prying human eyes. Kate sat in the chair opposite him, studying his face with concern. "Has this happened before? The getting sick after eating?" "Occasionally," Victor said. "I have a sensitive constitution." "You can't eat garlic, can you?" "You had a reaction." Victor blinked. That was actually a reasonable conclusion. Severe intolerance, he said, latching onto the explanation. I should have mentioned it to the waiter. Why didn't you? I didn't want to seem high maintenance. Kate laughed softly. Victor, having a food allergy isn't high maintenance. It's a medical condition. You should have said something. I wanted tonight to be perfect, Victor admitted. I wanted to be normal. Just a regular person having dinner with a fascinating woman. No complications. Nothing about you is regular, Kate said, and Victor's blood ran cold until she continued. You're brilliant and kind, and you live in a Gothic mansion full of priceless books. You're interesting, Victor. That's so much better than normal. Victor looked at her, this extraordinary woman sitting in his library at midnight, looking at him with warmth despite the catastrophic evening. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to explain why he was the way he was, why he lived in darkness, why he seemed to exist outside of normal time. But he couldn't. The truth would send her running. It always did, the few times he tried to tell people over the centuries. Humans didn't want to know that monsters were real. You should go, he said quietly. I'll be all right. Thank you for driving me home. For everything. Kate stood, but she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she moved closer to Victor, reached out, and gently touched his cheek. Can I ask you something? Anything, Victor said, very aware of her proximity, her warmth, the sound of her heartbeat. Are you going to ask me out again? Despite this disaster. Victor managed a smile. I was planning to. If you'd say yes. I'd say yes, Kate said softly. On one condition. What's that? Next time, you tell me about your food restrictions before we order. And maybe we skip the restaurant entirely. We could do something else. Like what? Victor asked, genuinely curious. I don't know. A museum, a walk. Sitting in your incredible library talking about books. Kate smiled. I don't need fancy dinners, Victor. I just want to spend time with you. Victor felt something crack open in his chest, some wall he'd built over centuries of isolation. I'd like that very much. Good, Kate said. She leaned down and, before Victor could process what was happening, pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. Now get some rest. Text me tomorrow so I know you survived the night. I will, Victor promised. Kate walked to the library door, then paused and looked back. Victor? For what it's worth, I had a wonderful time tonight. Disasters and all. Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing through the foyer, the front door opening and closing with a soft click. Victor sat in his library, listening to her car start and drive away, feeling more alive than he had in a century. Victor barely made it to his bedroom before his body rejected the evening's meal with extreme prejudice. He spent the next hour in decidedly unromantic circumstances, regretting every decision that had led him to consume an entire sea base with garlic aioli. Around 2 in the morning, Dmitri let himself in through the back entrance. Victor heard him coming long before he arrived, his footsteps deliberately loud to announce his presence. Victor! Dmitri called out. Are you still alive? Well, you know what I mean. In here, Victor croaked from where he lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Dying. Again. Dmitri appeared in the doorway, immaculate as always in a three-piece suit despite the late hour. He took one look at Victor and burst out laughing. Oh my God, you actually ate the food, didn't you? You absolute madman. She was so happy, Victor said weakly. She ordered the duck. I couldn't just sit there with nothing. Yes, you could have, Dmitri said, sitting in the chair beside Victor's bed. That's what humans do all the time. They say, I'm not hungry, and they order water and everyone moves on with their lives. That seemed rude. And poisoning yourself with garlic seemed polite? Victor groaned. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Dmitri's expression softened. So, how did it go? Before the gastrointestinal disaster, I mean. She's incredible, Victor said, And even feeling as terrible as he did, he couldn't help but smile. Smart, funny, passionate about her work. She didn't laugh at me when I spilled water all over myself. Well, she did laugh, but in a kind way. You spilled water on yourself? In my lap. It looked extremely unfortunate. Dmitri covered his face with his hands. Victor, please tell me this got better. I had to leave the table 3 times. My fangs extended in the middle of the restaurant. I nearly passed out from garlic poisoning. And then she drove me home and saw the house. She saw the Gothic nightmare mansion? She loved it, Victor said, still amazed. She's a preservation specialist. She looked at the molding and the architecture like it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Of course she did, Dmitri said, shaking his head. You found the one woman in the world who would be charmed by your creepy vampire house. It's not creepy. It's historically significant. It has gargoyles, Victor. Functional gargoyles. They're drainage systems. Dmitri laughed. So are you seeing her again? She wants to, Victor said, and he couldn't keep the wonder out of his voice. Despite everything, she wants a second date. Then you're going to need a new plan, Dmitri said firmly. No restaurants. No food. Find something you can actually do without revealing your undead nature. She suggested museums. Or walks. Or just talking in the library. Perfect. Stick to that. And Victor. Dmitri's voice turned serious. What are you going to do if this gets serious? You can't hide what you are forever. Victor had been trying not to think about that. I don't know. One date at a time. Just be careful, Dmitri said. I don't want to see you hurt. You've been alone for so long, and now you've found someone who makes you happy. That's dangerous for someone like us. I know, Victor said quietly. But Dmitri? I think she might be worth the risk. Dmitri studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then I hope she is. Now, do you need blood? You look terrible. I feel terrible. And yes, please. Dmitri disappeared and returned with a blood bag from Victor's refrigerator. Medical grade, ethically sourced from blood banks, not a human in sight. Victor had given up hunting decades ago. It was cleaner this way, safer, less complicated. He drank, and immediately felt better. His color returned, the nausea faded, and his body began to heal from the garlic assault. Better? Dmitri asked. Much better, thank you. Good. Now tell me everything, from the beginning. I want every excruciating detail. So Victor did. He recounted the entire evening, from his careful outfit selection to Kate's kiss on his forehead. Dmitri listened with the attention of a friend who'd known Victor for over 100 years, laughing at the disasters and going quiet during the tender moments. You've got it bad, Dmitri said when Victor finished. I know. 300 years, and a book restorer finally does you in. She's not just a book restorer, Victor protested. She's brilliant and kind, and she looks at the world with such wonder. Do you know how rare that is? To still find wonder in things. I do, Dmitri said softly. That's how I know you should hold on to her. If she'll have you. If I can figure out how to date without dying of garlic poisoning. That seems like a reasonable goal, Dmitri agreed. Now sleep. Or rest. Or whatever it is we do during our downtime. You've had a long night. After Dmitri left, Victor lay in bed, replaying the evening in his mind. The disasters, yes, but also Kate's laugh. The way she'd touched his hand. Her excitement over his library. The kiss on his forehead that had felt like a benediction. He pulled out his phone and stared at her contact information. Should he text her now? Was it too soon? Too desperate? Before he could overthink it, his phone buzzed with a message from Kate. Kate * made it home safely. Myrtle is still skeptical about you, but I had a wonderful time tonight. Feel better. Victor stared at the heart emoji for a long moment, then typed back. Victor *, I'm so glad. Despite my best efforts to sabotage the evening, I had a wonderful time too. I promise the next date will involve significantly less garlic. Kate * and significantly less fish? Victor * definitely less fish. Kate * then I'm looking forward to it. Good night, Victor. Victor * good night, Kate. Victor set his phone down and smiled into the darkness. He'd survived plagues, wars, revolutions, and the entire 20th century. Surely he could figure out how to date one extraordinary woman. How hard could it be? Victor woke at sunset the following evening, which was normal for him but inconvenient for maintaining any pretense of humanity. The sun had set at 5:47 p.m., and he'd risen at 6 p.m. sharp, his internal clock precise after centuries of practice. He checked his phone immediately. 3 messages from Kate, sent throughout the day. 9 a.m. ** morning. Just wanted to check that you survived the night. No garlic-induced complications? 12:30 p.m. ** I keep thinking about your library. Would you be offended if I asked to come back and look at your collection properly? For professional reasons, obviously. 3:45 p.m. ** okay. I'm being weird. Ignore me. But seriously, are you okay? Victor cursed his nocturnal nature. She'd been worrying about him all day while he'd been dead to the world. Literally. I'm so sorry for the delayed response. I slept most of the day recovering. I'm much better now. And yes, please come look at the collection anytime. For professional reasons or otherwise. Her response came within seconds. Oh, thank God. I was starting to worry I'd actually poisoned you. When can I come over? Victor considered his schedule. Nighttime, every night, forever. I'm free most evenings. I work from home, so my schedule is flexible. Tomorrow night, say 7 o'clock? Perfect. I'll make sure the library is presentable. Victor, your library is already more beautiful than most museums. But I appreciate the effort. See you tomorrow. 2 heart emojis in 2 days. Victor allowed himself to feel hopeful. He spent the next 24 hours in a state of anxious preparation. He dusted every book in his library, which was absurd because he dusted them regularly anyway. He arranged and rearranged the reading chairs. He tested the lighting to make sure it was warm and inviting but not too bright. He selected several first editions he thought Kate would find interesting and placed them on the reading table. Then he panicked about refreshments. What did one serve a human guest? He couldn't exactly offer blood. Regular food and drinks would just sit there, and used by him, looking suspicious. Dmitri stopped by at 6:30, took one look at Victor's manic preparations, and laughed. You're overthinking this. I want everything to be perfect, Victor said, adjusting a book for the 3rd time. She's coming to look at books, not judge your hosting skills. Just be yourself. Well, not entirely yourself. Don't mention the vampire thing. That's hardly helpful. It's the best advice I've got, Dmitri said cheerfully. Oh, I brought you something. He held up a bottle. Sparkling cider. Looks like champagne, doesn't require you to drink it, and if she asks why you're not having any, you can say you're still recovering from last night. Victor took the bottle gratefully. Thank you. That's actually brilliant. I've been doing this longer than you have, remember? 1683. You're still practically a baby at 342. And yet somehow I'm better at modern dating than you are. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Victor checked his appearance one final time in the non-reflective surface of a darkened window, ran his fingers through his hair, and went to answer the door. Kate stood on his doorstep in jeans and a soft green sweater, carrying a leather messenger bag and looking absolutely radiant. Hi, she said, smiling. Hi, Victor managed. Come in, please. She stepped into the foyer, and Victor noticed she was looking around with fresh eyes, taking in details she'd missed the night before in her concern for his health. I meant to say this last night, but Victor, your home is extraordinary. The preservation work alone must be a full-time job. It keeps me busy, Victor said, leading her toward the library. I've had a lot of time to work on it. They entered the library, and Kate made that same soft sound of appreciation she'd made the night before. She set her bag down and immediately gravitated to the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines with obvious delight. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the books. "Please," Victor said. "That's why you're here." For the next hour, Victor watched Kate explore his collection with the focused intensity she brought to everything. She pulled books carefully from the shelves, examined bindings, checked copyright pages, and occasionally made small sounds of wonder or surprise. "Victor, this is a first-edition Mary Shelley," she said, holding Frankenstein with reverent hands. "From 1818. Do you know how rare these are?" "I have some idea," Victor said, remembering when he'd bought it fresh from the publisher. He'd found the premise amusing at the time. Still did, actually. "And this Dracula," Kate continued, pulling out another volume. "First edition, 1897. The condition is pristine. How do you even acquire books like these?" "Estate sales, auctions, private collectors," Victor said vaguely. "I've been collecting for a long time." Kate set the Dracula down and turned to look at him. "Victor, can I ask you something personal?" Victor tensed. "Of course. How old are you? And I don't mean that in a rude way, you have the collection of someone who's been doing this for 50 years, but you look like you're in your 30s. And some of these books, the way you talk about them, it's like you remember when they were published." Victor's mind raced. This was dangerous territory. "I'm older than I look," he said carefully. "Good genetics. And I started collecting young. Family inheritance." It wasn't a lie, exactly. Just a creative interpretation of the truth. Kate studied him for a moment, and Victor had the unsettling feeling she could see right through him. But then she smiled. "Well, whoever started this collection had excellent taste. And you've maintained it beautifully. Would you like to see the really special pieces?" Victor asked, eager to change the subject. "I keep them in a climate-controlled room." "You have a climate-controlled room? Victor, are you secretly a millionaire?" "I prefer to think of myself as a dedicated preservationist," Victor said, which was deflection but not denial. He led her to a smaller room off the main library, where he kept his most precious acquisitions. Illuminated manuscripts. Incunabula. Books so old and rare that they belonged in museums. Kate's reaction was everything Victor had hoped for. She stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, her eyes wide. "This is incredible. Victor, some of these should be in the British Library. Or the Vatican." "I take good care of them," Victor said. "And this way, I can actually read them." "You read them? What's the point of having books if you don't read them?" Kate laughed. Most collectors would have a heart attack at the thought of actually touching their acquisitions. "You're different." "I've been told that before," Victor said dryly. Kate moved closer to a glass case containing an illuminated book of Hours from the 15th century. "May I?" Victor unlocked the case and carefully removed the book, handing it to Kate. She took it with practiced care, her hand steady despite the obvious excitement in her eyes. "The gilt work," she breathed. "The pigments. Victor, this is museum quality." "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Victor said, looking not at the book but at Kate's face, watching her appreciation, her joy in the craftsmanship. She looked up at him, and something shifted in the air between them. They were standing very close in the small room, the only light coming from the carefully positioned LED fixtures designed to protect the books. "Thank you for showing me this," Kate said softly. "I know we barely know each other, but you're sharing something really important to you. I don't take that lightly." "I wanted to share it with you," Victor said. "You understand. You see books the way I do. Not as objects or investments, but as pieces of human history. Evidence that people lived and thought and created beautiful things." "Even the monsters created beautiful things," Kate said, glancing at the Dracula First Edition visible through the doorway. "Especially the monsters," Victor agreed, with more feeling than he intended. Kate set the Book of Hours down carefully and turned to face him fully. "Victor, can I ask you something else? You're full of questions tonight. It's the researcher in me. I can't help it." "Ask," Victor said. "Last night, you said I make you forget you're lonely. What did you mean by that?" Victor took a breath he didn't need. "I meant that I've spent a long time alone. By choice, mostly. It's easier that way. Less complicated. But loneliness becomes a habit, and eventually you forget what it's like to connect with someone. Until you meet someone who reminds you." "Is that what I did? Reminded you?" "You did more than that," Victor said. "You made me want to try again. To take the risk of letting someone in, even though it's terrifying." "Why is it terrifying?" "Because I'm a 300-year-old vampire and you're a mortal woman with a full life ahead of you, and eventually you'll age and die while I remain unchanged, and I can't bear the thought of losing you even though I've only known you for 3 weeks. Because caring about people means they can hurt you," Victor said instead. "And I've been hurt before." Kate reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm, alive, and Victor could feel her pulse under his fingers. "I've been hurt too. But I think you're worth the risk, Victor Cassius. Mysterious mansion and weird food restrictions and all." Victor looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between her warm skin and his cool pallor. "I have to tell you something." Kate waited, patient and open. "I'm not normal. There are things about me that are different. Unusual. And I want to be honest with you, but I'm afraid that if I am, you'll run." "Try me," Kate said. Victor hesitated on the edge of confession. He could tell her. Right now. Explain everything. Show her his fangs, demonstrate his speed, prove that monsters were real and she was holding hands with one. But looking at her open, trusting face, he couldn't do it. Not yet. It was too soon, too fragile. He needed more time to build something strong enough to survive the truth. "I have a medical condition," he said, which was true from a certain perspective. "It's rare and complicated. It's why I can't eat most foods, why I avoid sunlight, why I keep strange hours. It's not contagious or dangerous, but it does make my life different from most people's." Kate squeezed his hand. "Okay. Thank you for telling me. Does it hurt? Are you in pain?" "No," Victor said, touched by her immediate concern. "I'm not in pain. I've learned to manage it. It's just limiting sometimes." "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here," Kate said. "And if you don't, that's okay too. Everyone has their private struggles." Victor felt a rush of affection so strong it was almost overwhelming. "How are you so understanding?" "I'm not always," Kate said. "Ask my ex-husband. But with you, it feels easy. Natural. Like we've known each other longer than 3 weeks." "I feel that too," Victor admitted. They stood there in the climate-controlled room, surrounded by centuries of human creativity, holding hands like teenagers. Then Kate smiled, mischievous and warm. "So, are you going to kiss me, or do I have to do all the work in this relationship?" Victor's mind went blank. You want me to kiss you?" "Victor, I drove you home when you were sick, came back the next night to look at your books, and I'm currently holding your hand in a room full of priceless manuscripts. I'm not being subtle here." "I noticed," Victor said, his lips twitching into a smile. "I'm just surprised. After the disaster of last night." "Last night was perfect because it was real," Kate said. "You didn't try to be someone you're not. Well, except for the part where you tried to eat an entire fish covered in garlic, despite apparently being allergic. That was inadvisable." "Extremely inadvisable," Victor agreed. "So." Victor made a decision. He could overthink this, worry about his fangs extending, about his lack of heartbeat, about all the ways this could go wrong. Or he could just kiss her. He chose the latter. Victor cupped Kate's face gently in his cool hands and kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But she didn't pull away. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and kissed him back. It was everything Victor had forgotten about kissing and everything he'd never known. Kate tasted like coffee and mint and life. Her warmth seeped into him, making him feel almost human, almost alive. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, though only Kate actually needed to breathe, Kate smiled up at him. "See? That wasn't so terrifying." "Speak for yourself," Victor said, but he was smiling too. "I'm absolutely terrified." "Good," Kate said. "That means it matters." They stood there for another moment, and then Kate laughed. "I should probably go. It's getting late, and I have an early appointment tomorrow." "But Victor—" "Yes." This was a much better second date than the first. "We're calling this a second date?" "We're definitely calling this a second date. Which means you now owe me a third." "I think I can arrange that," Victor said. "Maybe something that doesn't involve food?" "Perfect. Surprise me." Victor walked her to the door, and they lingered in the foyer, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Kate kissed him once more, quick and sweet, and stepped out into the night. "Text me," she called back. "I will," Victor promised. He watched her drive away, then closed the door and leaned against it, smiling like an idiot. Dmitri emerged from the shadows of the upper hallway, where he'd undoubtedly been eavesdropping. "So," Dmitri said, descending the stairs with a knowing smirk. "That went well. You were listening?" "Obviously. This is the most entertainment I've had in decades. You're hopelessly smitten with a mortal woman who thinks you have a medical condition. This is going to end in disaster or true love, and I'm fascinated to see which." "Your support is overwhelming," Victor said dryly. "I'm being supportive. I didn't interrupt when you were having your romantic moment. I even dimmed the lights in the manuscript room remotely. You're welcome, by the way." "That was you. Someone had to help set the mood. You were discussing illuminated manuscripts. Not exactly the height of romance." Victor shook his head, but he was still smiling. "She kissed me. I noticed. And you kissed her back without fonging out, which is impressive. I was very careful." "You're going to have to tell her eventually," Dmitri said, his tone turning serious. "The longer you wait, the harder it will be." "I know," Victor said. "But not yet. Not when everything is so new. I just want a little more time." "Time is the one thing you have plenty of," Dmitri pointed out. "She doesn't. Don't waste hers by hiding." Victor nodded, knowing his friend was right but not yet ready to face that truth. For now, he wanted to hold on to this feeling. Hope. Possibility. The electric thrill of new romance. He'd survived 300 years. Surely he could figure out how to date one remarkable woman without revealing his undead nature. Surely. Over the next 3 weeks, Victor and Kate fell into a pattern. They met several times a week, always in the evening, always at Victor's mansion or walking through the city's historic district at night. They talked about books, history, art, and gradually about themselves. Kate told him about growing up in Oregon, her failed marriage to a man who never really saw her, her decision to pursue book restoration despite her parents' concerns about the practicality of the career. Victor told her carefully edited stories about his travels, his love of learning, his appreciation for craftsmanship. They were good together. Natural. Kate made Victor laugh with her dry wit and occasional absurdist observations. Victor made Kate think with his questions and insights. They challenged each other intellectually while supporting each other emotionally. But the secrets were building. Victor caught himself in small lies constantly. Why he never ate when they were together, still managing that condition. Why he never invited her over during the day, I work best at night. Why all his stories seemed to have an odd timeless quality to them, I read a lot of history. And Kate, perceptive Kate, was starting to notice. It came to a head on a Thursday night. They were in Victor's library, Kate curled up in one of the leather chairs with a book while Victor sat across from her, ostensibly reading but mostly just watching her. The scene was so domestic, so comfortable, that Victor let his guard down. "Victor," Kate said suddenly, looking up from her book. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Victor said, though alarm bells were ringing in his head. "Why don't you have any pictures?" Victor blinked. "Pictures. Family photos. Friends. There are portraits all over this house, but they're all antiques. There's nothing modern. No photographs at all." Because photographs don't capture images of vampires, Victor thought. Out loud he said, "I'm not sentimental about photography." "That's not an answer," Kate said gently. "Everyone has photos. It's like evidence of life, memories, connections. But your house is like a museum. Beautiful, curated, but impersonal. There's no evidence that you exist in the present tense." Victor set down his book. "What are you asking me, Kate?" "I'm asking if you're hiding something," Kate said. "And before you say no, please just think about it. The weird food restrictions. The complete avoidance of daylight. The fact that you seemingly have unlimited money but no visible source of income. This house that looks like it hasn't changed in a century. The way you talk about historical events like you lived through them." Victor's dead heart would have been pounding if it could. "Kate." "I'm not judging," Kate interrupted. "Everyone has secrets. I like you, Victor. A lot. And I want this to be real. But I feel like you're holding back. Like there's this wall between us that you won't let me through." She was right. Of course she was right. And Victor realized in that moment that he had a choice. He could continue lying, building the wall higher until it inevitably collapsed and crushed everything beneath it. Or he could trust her with the truth and hope she didn't run. "You're right," Victor said quietly. "I am hiding something. Something significant." Kate set down her book and gave him her full attention. "Okay. But I need you to promise me something first. I need you to promise that you'll hear me out completely before you react. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane." "Victor, you're scaring me." "I don't mean to. I just need you to understand that everything I'm about to say is true, even though it sounds impossible." Kate stood up and crossed to him, kneeling beside his chair and taking his hand. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together." Victor looked down at her trusting face and felt 300 years of loneliness pressing down on him. He could do this. He had to do this. "I'm not entirely human," he said. Kate waited for him to continue. "I know how that sounds," Victor said quickly. "But it's the truth. I'm different. I have been for a very long time." "Different how?" Victor took a breath he didn't need. "I'm a vampire, Kate. I've been a vampire since 1724. The silence that followed was deafening. Kate stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, a short, uncertain sound. "That's not funny, Victor. I'm not joking." Kate stood up, taking a step back. "Vampires aren't real. This is... what, some kind of test? Are you trying to see if I'll believe anything you say?" "I wish I was," Victor said. "But I'm telling you the truth. I'm 300 years old. I don't eat food because I can't digest it. I avoid sunlight because it burns me. I keep strange hours because I'm nocturnal. All of those portraits you asked about, they're me. Different eras, different names, but all me." Kate was shaking her head. "This is crazy. You're telling me you're a vampire. Like, with fangs and blood drinking and all of it." "Yes," Victor said simply. "Prove it," Kate said, her voice sharp with something between anger and fear. "If you're really a vampire, prove it." Victor stood slowly, giving her space. "Are you sure you want me to?" "Yes." Victor concentrated, letting his glamour drop. His fangs extended with a soft click. His eyes darkened to black, and his already pale skin took on the waxy, translucent quality of the truly dead. He moved faster than human sight could follow, appearing across the room in an instant. Kate gasped, stumbling backward. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" "Kate!" Victor started, moving toward her. Don't. Kate held up a hand. Just don't move. I need a minute. Victor froze, watching as Kate processed what she was seeing. She was breathing rapidly, her heart hammering so loud he could hear it from across the room. But she wasn't screaming. She wasn't running. That was something. This is real, Kate said, more to herself than to him. You're actually a vampire. Yes, Victor said, keeping his voice calm and level. He retracted his fangs, let his eyes return to their normal gray, tried to appear as non-threatening as possible. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid of exactly this reaction. What reaction? The one where I find out the man I've been dating is a mythological creature. The one where you look at me like I'm a monster. Kate's expression softened slightly at that. I'm not. She took a shaky breath. I need you to explain. All of it. How is this possible? How long have you been? What happened to you? Victor moved slowly to his chair and sat down, keeping his movements deliberately unhurried. It's a long story. I have time, Kate said, though she remained standing, maintaining the distance between them. So Victor told her. Not everything. 300 years was too much for one conversation, but the important parts. How he'd been turned in 1724 by a vampire named Lisette whom he'd loved and who'd betrayed him. How he'd struggled for decades to control his bloodlust. How he'd eventually found peace in his condition, learned to see it not as a curse but simply as what he was. How he'd lived through centuries of human history, watching the world change while he remained frozen. I don't kill, Victor said firmly. I haven't harmed a human in over 100 years. I get blood from medical suppliers, blood banks, donations. It's all ethical, consensual, in a roundabout way. Kate was quiet for a long time, processing. Then she asked, Why did you ask me out? If you knew this could never. I mean, I'm human. I'm going to age and die while you. She gestured vaguely. I know, Victor said quietly. I told myself all of that. I tried to convince myself that getting involved with you was selfish and foolish. But Kate, you made me feel alive again. You made me remember what it was like to want something beyond mere existence. I couldn't resist that. I couldn't resist you. So what happens now? Kate asked. Do we just date? Pretend this is normal? That you're not a literal vampire? I don't know, Victor admitted. I've never done this before. I've never told anyone what I am and had them stay long enough to have this conversation. Kate laughed, a slightly hysterical edge to it. Well, congratulations, I guess. You picked the world's most stubborn book restorer to fall for. Are you? Victor barely dared to hope. Are you saying you're staying? I'm saying I'm not running away screaming, Kate corrected. Yet. I need time to process this, Victor. This is a lot. Vampires are real. That's not a small thing to wrap my head around. I understand. But I also... Kate moved closer, cautiously, like approaching a skittish animal. I believe you. I don't know why, but I do. Maybe it's because it explains so much. The house, the collection, the way you are. It all makes sense now. Terrifying, impossible sense, Victor said. The best kind, Kate said, and she smiled, small and uncertain but genuine. She sat in the chair across from him, the same position they'd been in countless times before, except now everything was different. So, vampire. Do you sleep in a coffin? I have a very nice bed, thank you. Crucifixes. Uncomfortable but not fatal. Garlic. Genuinely awful. The restaurant was a nightmare. I knew something was wrong with the garlic, Kate said triumphantly. You looked like you were dying. I was, in a manner of speaking. They looked at each other, and suddenly Kate was laughing, real laughter now, not hysteria. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I'm sitting in a Gothic mansion having a casual conversation with a 300-year-old vampire about garlic allergies. When you put it that way, it does sound absurd, Victor admitted. Can I ask you something else? Anything. When you kissed me, Kate said, her cheeks coloring slightly. Was that real? Or was it some kind of vampire? I don't know, thrall thing? Mind control. It was completely real, Victor said firmly. I can't control minds. I can move fast and I'm very strong and I have enhanced senses, but I can't make people feel things they don't feel. Every moment between us has been genuine, Kate. I swear it. Kate nodded, relief visible in her expression. Okay, good. Because I really liked kissing you, and it would suck to find out it was supernatural manipulation. No manipulation, Victor promised. Just one very nervous vampire trying not to fong out in the middle of a romantic moment. Is that a concern? Kate asked, intrigued despite herself. The fangs just come out? When I'm emotional or hungry, yes. I've gotten better at controlling it over the years, but it's still something I have to be conscious of. So when we were kissing, I was very, very careful, Victor said, and very aware of my teeth. Kate was quiet for another moment, then stood up and crossed to him. Victor remained still, uncertain of her intention, as she stopped directly in front of his chair and looked down at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Can I see them? She asked. The fangs. Are you sure? I'm a researcher, Victor. You can't show me something impossible and not expect me to want to examine it. Despite everything, Victor smiled. Fair point. He opened his mouth slightly and let his fangs extend. Kate leaned in closer, studying them with the same focused attention she gave to damaged manuscripts. Fascinating, she murmured. They're almost like retractable cat claws, but dental. Can you control them individually? No, it's both or neither. And they're sharper than human canines? Much sharper. Designed to pierce the carotid artery. Kate straightened up. Okay, that's sufficiently creepy. You can put them away now. Victor retracted his fangs, and Kate resumed her seat. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of revelation hanging between them. I should go, Kate said finally. I need to think about all of this. Process. Victor's heart sank, but he nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. Kate stood, and Victor walked her to the door. In the foyer, she turned to face him one more time. Victor, thank you for telling me. For trusting me with this. Thank you for not running away screaming, Victor said. The night's not over yet, Kate said, but her tone was light, almost teasing. Then she did something that surprised Victor completely. She stepped close and kissed him, soft and quick, before pulling back. I'll call you, she said. I promise. Then she was gone, and Victor was left standing in his foyer, wondering if he just made the best or worst decision of his 300-year life. 3 days passed with no word from Kate. 3 days during which Victor alternated between hope and despair, checking his phone constantly, jumping at every notification. Dmitri tried to be supportive, but even his patience wore thin. Stop moping, he said on the third evening, finding Victor sprawled dramatically on the library sofa. She said she'd call. Give her time. What if she's gone to the authorities? What if she's told someone? The authorities don't care about vampires because they don't believe vampires exist, Dmitri pointed out. At worst, she's told a friend that you're delusional. At best, she's processing a major revelation and trying to decide if dating an immortal creature is worth the complications. When you put it that way, the answer is clearly no, Victor said morosely. Oh, stop it. You're Victor Cassius. You've survived revolutions and plagues and the invention of reality television. You can survive one woman taking time to think. Victor's phone buzzed, and he lunged for it with distinctly unvampire-like desperation. It was a text from Kate. Kate Asterisk, can you meet me at Riverside Park? The Oak Grove. 9 p.m. Victor typed back immediately. Victor Asterisk, yes. I'll be there. Kate asterisk good. We need to talk. She wants to meet, Victor told Dmitri. Well, that's promising. If she was going to reject you, she'd probably just text it. Or she wants to do it in person. To be kind. Glass half empty as always, Dmitri said. Go. Meet her. And Victor, whatever happens, you tried. That's more than you've done in a century. Victor arrived at Riverside Park at 8:45, too anxious to be fashionably late. The oak grove was a small cluster of old trees near the river, secluded and quiet at night. Kate was already there, sitting on a bench, illuminated by moonlight. She looked up as he approached. You're early. So are you, Victor pointed out, sitting beside her, carefully maintaining a respectful distance. I was too nervous to wait at home, Kate admitted. I've been here for 20 minutes. They sat in silence for a moment, and then Kate said, I did research. Research? On vampires. Folklore, mythology, reported sightings. There's surprisingly little concrete information, but what exists is, well, it's varied. Some sources say you're soulless monsters. Others say you're just a different species. What are you, Victor? Really? Victor considered the question carefully. I'm a person. I feel I make choices. I'm not human anymore, but I'm not a mindless predator either. I'm something in between. Someone in between. Do you miss it? Being human? Sometimes, Victor said honestly. I miss food, genuinely tasting it instead of just tolerating it. I miss the sun. I miss growing older, changing, the sense of time moving forward. But I don't miss everything. I like the clarity vampirism gave me. The perspective. The ability to see patterns in history that humans miss because their lives are too short. Kate nodded slowly. I spent 3 days thinking about this. About us. About whether I could actually date someone who drinks blood and can't go to brunch. Despite his anxiety, Victor smiled slightly. Those are significant obstacles. They are, Kate agreed. But then I thought about what you said. About how I make you forget you're lonely. And I realized you do the same for me. When I'm with you, I feel seen. Understood. Like someone finally gets who I am and what I love. That's rare, Victor. That's precious. So. Victor hardly dared to hope. So I want to try, Kate said, turning to look at him directly. I want to see if this can work. But I need you to be honest with me from now on. Completely honest. No more secrets. No more secrets, Victor promised. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Okay. Then tell me this. What do you want from this? From us. Victor thought about all the ways he could answer that question. The safe answers, the careful ones, the responses that wouldn't reveal too much or ask for too much. Instead, he chose honesty. I want mornings, even though I'll never see them, Victor said quietly. I want to know your favorite breakfast and buy the ingredients even though I can't eat them. I want to listen to you talk about book restoration and watch your face light up when you find a new acquisition. I want to be the person you call when something good happens. I want to matter to you the way you matter to me. Kate's eyes glistened. You already do, you idiot. Why do you think I'm here? Why do you think I spent 3 days researching vampire mythology instead of just writing you off as crazy? Because you're a researcher? Because I'm falling for you, Kate said. Against all logic and reason, I'm falling for a vampire who can't eat garlic and lives in a Gothic mansion and is probably going to outlive me by centuries. Victor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Kate, I need you to understand something. I will outlive you. There's no probably about it. Unless something kills me, I'm effectively immortal. That means this relationship has an expiration date, and it's not a fair one. I know, Kate said. I've thought about that too, and it terrifies me. But Victor, every relationship has an expiration date. Humans die. People grow apart. Nothing lasts forever. At least with you, I know exactly what I'm getting into. You're getting into a relationship with a creature who sleeps during the day, drinks blood, and has centuries of emotional baggage. And you're getting into a relationship with a divorced workaholic who talks to her cat and has strong opinions about 15th century binding techniques, Kate countered. Nobody's perfect. Victor laughed, genuine and surprised. When you put it that way. We're both disasters, Kate said, smiling. But maybe we can be disasters together. I'd like that, Victor said softly. Kate leaned in and kissed him, and this time Victor didn't hold back. He pulled her closer, kissing her with 300 years of loneliness and longing and hope. Kate kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms around his neck, and for a moment, Victor let himself forget about all the complications and just feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, well, Kate was breathing heavily. Victor was just caught up in the moment. Kate rested her forehead against his. So, ground rules. Ground rules. If we're doing this, we need rules. First, you have to tell me when you're hungry. I don't want you suffering in silence because you're worried about scaring me. Agreed, Victor said. Second, you have to let me meet your friends. You said there are other vampires. I want to meet them. Dimitri will be insufferably smug about this, but agreed. Third, we take this slow. No rushing into anything, no grand gestures. We figure this out as we go. That seems wise, Victor said, though privately he was already thinking about all the grand gestures he wanted to make. And fourth, Kate said, her expression turning serious. You have to promise me that if this gets too hard, if the immortality thing becomes too much, you'll let me go. I don't want you suffering out of obligation. Kate. I'm serious, Victor. I care about you too much to trap you in something that makes you miserable. The only thing that would make me miserable is losing you, Victor said. But I promise. If it becomes too much, we'll talk about it. Honestly. Okay then, Kate said. She stood up and held out her hand. Walk me home. Victor took her hand and stood. I'd be honored. They walked through the park together, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Kate asked questions about vampire physiology, fascinating, vampire history, complicated, and what Dimitri was like, insufferable but loyal. Victor asked about her restoration work, her cat, and what she wanted for the future. I want to open my own restoration studio someday, Kate said. Something small but respected. A place where people can bring damaged books and know they'll be treated with care. You'd be amazing at that, Victor said. I'd need capital, though. Equipment, space, insurance. It's expensive. I could help, Victor offered, then quickly added, not as a handout. As an investment. I believe in you, Kate. I'd want to support your work. Let's table that conversation for when we've been dating longer than a month, Kate said diplomatically. But I appreciate the offer. They reached Kate's apartment building, a converted warehouse in the Arts District. She lived on the 3rd floor, she told him, in a loft full of books and plants and cat furniture. Do you want to come up? Kate asked. Meet Myrtle? She's probably still awake and judging me for staying out so late. I'd love to, Victor said. Kate's apartment was everything Victor had expected. Warm, lived in, full of personality. Books everywhere, plants on every surface, and a large tortoiseshell cat sitting in the window, regarding Victor with extreme suspicion. Myrtle, this is Victor, Kate said, picking up the cat. He's a vampire, but he's nice. Please don't hiss at him. Myrtle hissed. She'll warm up to you, Kate said optimistically, setting the cat down. Myrtle immediately fled to the bedroom. I have that effect on cats sometimes, Victor said. They can sense what I am. Well, Myrtle's a snob anyway. Don't take it personally. They sat on Kate's couch, a comfortable old thing covered in cat hair, and talked until nearly 2 in the morning. Victor told her about his favorite decades, the 1920s for the music, the Renaissance for the art. Kate told him about her worst restoration job, a water-damaged first edition that had also been attacked by mice. They laughed and debated and fell into the easy conversation that had attracted them to each other in the first place. Finally, Kate yawned, covering her mouth. I should sleep. Some of us are still bound by human biological needs. I should go, Victor said, standing reluctantly. Kate walked him to the door, and they stood in the threshold, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Victor. Yes. Thank you for telling me the truth. I know that was scary. Thank you for staying, Victor said. I know that was scary too. They kissed once more, slow and sweet, and then Victor forced himself to leave before he did something foolish like ask to stay and watch her sleep, which was definitely too vampire creepy for their current relationship status. He walked home through the empty streets, feeling lighter than he had in decades, maybe centuries. He had told Kate the truth, and she had stayed. She knew what he was, and she wanted to try anyway. It was more than Victor had ever hoped for. When he arrived home, Dmitri was waiting in the library, pretending to read. Well, she wants to date me, Victor said, unable to keep the smile off his face. She knows everything, and she wants to try. I knew I liked her, Dmitri said, grinning. So, when do I get to meet this paragon of understanding? Soon, Victor promised. She wants to meet you too. Excellent. I have so many embarrassing stories about you from the 1800s. Please don't. I absolutely will. That's what friends are for. Victor collapsed into his favorite chair, still smiling. Dmitri. Yes. Thank you. For pushing me to try. For supporting this. For being insufferable in the most helpful way possible. You're welcome, Dmitri said. Now, tell me everything. And don't skip the part where you went full vampire in front of her. I want details. So Victor told him, and Dmitri listened with the attention of a friend who'd been waiting a century for Victor to find someone worth fighting for. And as Victor recounted the evening, he realized that he had. Kate Stewart was absolutely worth fighting for. Even if it meant learning to navigate a relationship between a vampire and a human, between someone who'd lived 300 years and someone who had perhaps 50 left. Even if it meant inevitable heartbreak somewhere down the line. For now, Victor had hope. He had possibility. He had Kate. And after 300 years of loneliness, that was everything.